say, the British law enforcement system, I think they have their priorities all screwed up. So I'm going to show you something that the British law enforcement system is cracking down on, and then I'm going to show you something that the British law enforcement system is something else they are doing, and you'll see the difference right away. So they're obviously spending heavy amounts of time right now cracking down on people who violate traffic ordinances. So this has become a very popular clip online. The local police in Britain tweeted out that this one guy who was speeding and violating the law and had a laser jammer, I guess, that was aimed at a traffic camera. He was flipping off the traffic camera all the way. This is North Yorkshire Police. They tweeted out, top tip. If you want to stay out of trouble, don't do what this driver did and swear at our mobile safety cameras while driving past in a car fitted with a laser jammer. Today, this guy is beginning 8 months in jail for perverting the course of justice. And then they released a video of this fellow who's driving with his finger up in the air, flipping off the camera. So it's you know, this is where they're putting their focus. Now, what's amazing about this is that obviously they're not just mad that the guy had a laser jammer, which apparently is illegal. It perverts the court of justice. They're really upset that he was flipping off the traffic camera. So this is where they're putting heavy focus. Other places where the Brits are putting heavy focus right now. So they just gave an £800 fine to a guy who had his girlfriend's pug make a Nazi salute on YouTube. Okay, so here's the story there. There's this guy in Britain who is a YouTube kind of lols guy. All he does is make funny YouTube videos, and he doesn't like his girlfriend's pug dog. And so his girlfriend is constantly going on and on about how cute this pug dog is. So while she was out of town, he trained the pug dog to give a Nazi salute every time he said gas the Jews. Okay, so it's ridiculous. It's comedy. Maybe it's funny to some, not funny to others. The Brits fined this guy £800. He barely escaped a jail sentence for training a pug dog to do a joke Nazi salute. So that's what the British authorities are focused on. Here's what they are not focused on. They're not focused on rape gangs in Britain. According to the UK Independent, grooming gangs abused more than 700 women and girls around Newcastle with arrogant persistence after police appeared to punish victims while letting the perpetrators walk free, a case review has found. The report into the response by authorities to child sexual exploitation found that before a large-scale police operation was launched in 2014, officers' actions were sending an unhelpful message to perpetrators. Investigators said the abuse could not be stopped without work to understand the profiles, motivations, and cultural influences of perpetrators after finding similarities with grooming in Rotherham, Rockdale, and Oxford. Here is the reason why they've been so soft on these grooming gangs. It's because these grooming gangs are largely Muslim men. And so every time they're in the press, they're referred to as South Asian men. The religion is never mentioned. We're supposed to pretend that unassimilated radical Muslim immigration into various European societies has no impact. But the Brits are not focused on that. No, instead, they're ensuring that a child must die. So the big story out of the UK today is actually the story of Alfie Evans. And this is very similar to the case you'll remember of Charlie Gard. Charlie Gard was an 11-month-old baby who had a degenerative brain condition. And the British courts ruled that the hospital could trump his parents' wishes. His parents wanted to bring him to the United States for experimental treatment, and the British court system ruled that the hospital, which had testified that it would be against the child's interests for him to be moved to the United States for the possibility of further treatment, they ruled instead that the kid had to be removed from life support and the parents had to watch him die. Well, now they're doing the same thing to Alfie Evans, who's 2 years old, suffers from an undiagnosed brain condition that has left him in a semi-vegetative state, and he's been ordered removed from life support by the British government over the wishes of his parents. His parents want to ship him to Italy and put him under the care of the Vatican Hospital. His parents wanted to move him there to pursue palliative measures, but the British court ruled that that would not be in Alfie's best interest. Instead, it would be in Alfie's best interest to die, which is an amazing ruling, right? The ruling that it would be better for you to die does not seem like a medical ruling. It seems like a values ruling. It seems like a ruling in favor of euthanasia as opposed to a ruling in favor of the possibility of a medical miracle or in favor of the possibility that maybe some doctor knows something that you don't. So they removed him from life support pursuant to the order of a British court. And then Alfie continued to breathe on his own for 15 hours after being disconnected from life support. They didn't think that was going to happen. They thought he'd die as soon as he was removed from life support. The hospital still has not reconnected him to oxygen machines, even though he has lived for 15 hours without the oxygen machines. There's supposed to be another court hearing today. And Alfie Evans' dad has talked to the media about all of this.
As you all know, I'm studying now and Alfie's still here. Why? Because I'm still fighting. I'm still fighting and so is Alfie. I've been in touch with the ambassador of Italy. If these doctors dare to remove my son's life, they're going to be done for murder by the Italians. I've got a private prosecution case right now in front of the chief judge. The chief judge will now decide if these are murdering my son. and I'm confident he will decide that. I've been Alfie's side every minute of every day. I've been with him all day today, and all they've done is try to do what they've been given permission to do, and that's murder my son in a straight-up execution. Straight-up execution. What I wanted to speak down the camera and say now, that my son's life lies in Jeremy Hunt's hands, and he's a member of Italy. My son belongs to Italy, and I'm not stopping this fight until Alfie tells me to. Alfie ain't telling me to fight. Stop fighting. I love this army. I love Alfie, and I love Kate, and I will not.
Okay, this is so the Italian government gave Alfie Italian citizenship so that they could issue an effort to save his life in the European High Court. You know, the United States government tried to do that, I believe, with Charlie Gard. It was something I was encouraging Congress people to do, is give him honorary citizenship so they could make a case that he ought to be removed from Britain and headed over to the United States. Pope Francis has tweeted, "Moved by the prayers and immense solidarity shown little Alfie Evans, I renew my appeal that the suffering of his parents may be heard and that their desire to seek new forms of treatment may be granted." Again, all this comes down to is, in Britain, they believe that in a conflict between the parents and the hospital, in a case of controversy, not in a case where clearly, the parents are refusing a life-saving treatment, for example, but in a case where the parents want to save the life and the hospitals want the kid to die, they're saying the hospitals still have full range over what exactly should happen to the kid, which is just an amazing, amazing argument, an amazing anti-life, bureaucratic argument. Evil comes in a lot of forms in terms of government. Evil comes in the form of tyranny. Evil comes in the form of communism. Evil comes in the form of governments that take a hands-off position with regard to murder. Evil also comes in the form of bureaucratic niceties. Bureaucrats who sit atop the world in their little offices in Britain and decide whether a child should live or die because they know more than the parents do, or because hospital administrators say they know more than the parents do. The British government actually had to place 30 officers around the hospital to prevent protesters from attempting to move the baby, because protesters were attempting to storm the hospital and remove the baby. And by the way, this father, I believe, under natural right, has every right to grab that baby and make a break for it and push everyone out of his way. It's his baby, it's his kid, and he's not attempting to kill the kid. He's attempting to save the kid. The hospital is attempting to kill the kid. It's just an amazing thing. Now, here's my question. Where is the American left in all of this? So the American right is saying, you got to save this kid's life. You got to do everything possible to save this kid's life. Where's the American left in all this? And the American left that suggests that abortion is fine because it's just a cluster of cells. But once the baby is born, it's no longer just a cluster of cells. Where are they for all of this? The American left that cheered. I remember there was a movie called John Q. It came out in 2002. It was a movie with Denzel Washington. And the movie was about a black kid who had an enlarged heart, and they didn't have the money to pay for his heart surgery. And so John Q took over the hospital with a gun and tried to hold the doctors hostage to perform the surgery on his son. Right? And this movie was praised to the skies by liberals because liberals said, this is what the American health system is like. Well, in this particular case, this is not about who's paying for what. The parents aren't asking the British government to pay for anything. In this particular case, you've got a father who is trying to remove his son from a hospital to save the son's life, and the American left is utterly silent. So when it comes to free market economics in the healthcare system in the United States, then they're very upset. But when it comes to actual bureaucratic murder happening in the UK, then the American left just goes completely silent, which says to me that this has a lot less to do with how they think the healthcare system should be run and a lot more to do with how they value human life. And that if the baby has some sort of degenerative brain condition, that this is a baby that is not deserving of life. You can see the short leap from here to the eugenics of the left in the early 20th century. It is not a long leap by any means whatsoever. It really is horrifying. And to show how horrifying it is, just remember, this week, the British royal family, Princess Kate and her husband, Prince Harry, they had a baby this week, and the entire nation of Britain celebrated. And this was a beautiful thing, of course. Imagine if, God forbid, one of the members of the royal family had a child like Alfie Evans. Do you really think the royal family would allow the hospital to kill the child in violation of the will of the parents? Do you really think that would happen? Or is there a class differentiation, even in a system where we pretend there is no class differentiation? Is there a difference between royal and rich in Britain and being poor and in the clutches of the National Health Service? The answer is, of course there is. Once the government gets to say what sort of care you deserve and what sort of care you must be provided, they also get to say what sort of care you don't deserve and what is best for the child. So there are folks who say this has nothing to do with nationalized health care because it isn't a question of rationing. But inherently, it is a question of how a ration system considers the value of human life, because they do have to make calls as to what is best for particular human lives. And they also have to decide whether they think a human life is worth living at a particular point. And they've decided this kid is suffering and that his suffering is not worth trying to preserve his life, which isn't their decision in the first place. It really is horrifying. It really is disgusting. And it's demonstrative of the difference in value held between the right and the left when it comes to saving human lives, even kids like Alfie Evans. It's devastating. It's devastating. This kid is the same age as my own kid, and the thought of a hospital trying to do this to me with regard to my own kid is so horrifying. I can't imagine a situation in which I would not bring a gun and try to break my kid out, just because, I mean, I don't know what the hell the right the hospital has to tell a parent what is best interest for their child when it comes to trying to kill the child. Again, it's one thing to say that the kid should be that the kid should be allowed to get a treatment when the parents don't want the kid to get a treatment. It is another thing to say the kid should be deprived of life-saving support because the hospital thinks differently than the parents. Just unbelievable.